Learn with me, Julie Cameron, a business growth specialist with Action Coach Solihull. For those that are joining us on LinkedIn and Facebook, welcome. Please do put your details in the chat boxes. Ask any questions that you may have as the webinar goes on. I will look at them and make sure that I answer them either actually as we are live on Facebook and LinkedIn, or alternatively a little bit later when I come off from being live. So what's today's webinar all about? I hear you ask. Well, today we are going to ask you and going to tell you and talk about how we can become that marketing machine. So I'm just going to share my screen and let's get underway. This is all about where we actually go to get more leads, as well as more sales, where we get more new business, but how we can also keep our existing business. So let's get started. So what is business all about? Well, business is all about, in my opinion, one very simple thing. It's about buying lifetime customers. Now, many of you are probably shaking your heads and saying, no, that's not right. Most would say business is about buying a product at a low price and selling it at a higher price, or hiring staff at a certain wage and billing them out. But what we really need to understand is that business is not product or service centric. If you want a profitable, high growth business, it needs to be customer centric. So it needs to be centered around the activity of buying customers and then ensuring to get the most lifetime value out of them. And of course, what basically means is that we want to get as high lifetime value out of them. In other words, as much repeat business, as much as, to the pound per transaction every time that they're with us. But we also want to buy them from the lowest possible costs. But we do need to then consider the quality of the client. So what do I mean by all of that? Some of you are probably going, I'm scratching my head already. Sometimes you can bring your cost of acquisition down too far, and it brings in a low quality lead. Which ultimately brings in a low quality customer, which then also brings you a low quality quality of lifetime value. So you've got to make sure that you're buying good quality customers, those that will bring real lifetime value to us, not just people who make one sale. So acquisition costs. There are two vital numbers we've got to work on. And these are, as I put on the screen, the acquisition cost and the lifetime value. So first and foremost, what does that mean and how do we measure them? Firstly, acquisition costs. I'll explain how we work that out in a minute. So let's look at our lifetime value first. I found the easiest way to do this is to go back to your database and say, okay, let's pick everyone whose name starts with a D or an M, and then take these people, work out how much they have spent with you. So take all the D's and all the M's and work out how much they've actually spent with you. Then average it out over the number of people you have in the letters you've chosen. And this will show you an approximate average lifetime value. So it's a great starting point. Okay. Now, acquisition costs. What we've got to remember is that there's two contributing factors to the acquisition cost. Basically, your cost to acquire the lead and your conversion rate. So if we want to bring down the acquisition costs, we can do so by bringing down the cost of buying a lead, or we can bring down the cost of conversion. So for example, what if we double our conversion? So we have our acquisition costs. If you've paid £20, for example, for a lead and you're converting 1 in 10, then you're spending £200. If you're converting 2 out of 10, then you're only £100 each. So by doubling our conversion, we can decrease our acquisition point costs. And it's the same, it's the true for lifetime value as well. The average revenue per sale and the number of transactions is a very big part of what lifetime value is. In other words, if you increase both, then you are increasing the lifetime value of the sale. And what you can see on the slide is obviously our 5 ways of marketing. So your number of leads and your conversion rate is your acquisition, and your number of transactions and your average value sale is where your lifetime value comes in. So there are 2 types of acquisition costs. that we're going to work through today, and understand which ones and how we need to use them and what our breakdown is for each of them. Okay, so the first acquisition cost is that one that we obviously want to do more of, and that's the allowable acquisition cost. So what does that mean? So if you look at the profit on your first average sale of a brand new customer, and that means for the average value sale, which is £100, what is your profit? And if, for example, your profit is £20, then your allowable acquisition cost is basically right there, anything less than £20. So by doing this, you're creating an unlimited marketing budget for yourselves. And again, I can just imagine you're all saying, what does that mean? Well, if you're putting out, let's say, imagine that you're running an ad for £10, okay, and it brought you in a customer that spent you £20. Then simply put, how often would you put that £10 ad out there? Now, I appreciate that's a really simple calculation, but you have to sit down and look at your business and work out what is your allowable acquisition cost, and is it less than the profit made by your first average sale of a brand new customer? And I suppose a great exercise is to do for anybody out there is to go back and take a look at the last 10 brand new customers that you had and look at their average value sale, their average spend this month, and then on average, what was the profit that was out of it? And this will give you a great starting point for your allowable acquisition cost. Brad always tells a story when he talks about the allowable acquisition cost, and this is when he had his dog food business. Basically fell in love with his strategy, and his marketing budget really wasn't a set amount to spend per week or month. It wasn't a percentage of the sales to spend either. What it was that he knew he had $38 profit in the first sale to the new customer. So then he knew if he could get the acquisition cost below that amount, then he would have an unlimited budget on marketing. So the only constraint was that could he keep up with the business, or how much could the business actually handle? If they could keep up with it, then fantastic. If not, then you'd have to slow down your marketing efforts. It was as simple as that. So in other words, look at your first sale for that brand new customer. How much profit are you making in that sale? And like I said, if they're spending £100 and £20 of that is profit, and you've actually only spent £10 to acquire that customer, then you're actually making £10 profit and you have an unlimited marketing budget. Now, the second type of acquisition cost is the one that most companies, and you probably out there, would be using. And in a way, not because they want to, but because they don't really know what they're doing. And that's not something really that I want to say, and I don't really say that lightly. The investment acquisition cost is basically where you're investing to buy a customer. And what this means is that you're now looking at your marketing budget from an investment point of view. It's, let's say, with those same numbers, and say you had £100 sale to a brand new customer, which £20 was profit. If it cost us £50 to buy that customer, we're making an investment in that customer, because our investment would be that £50. We'll get that investment back over time. Okay, so our goal is to make sure that that customer is actually buying from us again and again and again, so that we can recoup our investment in that particular customer. People need to understand that if every customer was profitable, then how profitable would your business be? What you have to think is that if you can buy leads for less, then how many do I need to purchase in order to become profitable? So when I sit down and look at this is what kills most brand new startup businesses. Most startup businesses will not succeed because they can't handle the purchase of new customers. They don't know how many customers they have got to purchase, and therefore they're struggling to do that in their business. So you've got to sit down inside a brand new business and ask yourself, how many customers will you need to hit that break-even point? What is the break-even point for you? And even for you as a business owner right now, how many new customers do you need per week or per month or per year? And another question is, what is the number of customers you need to replace the ones that are leaving, and keep your business running at a steady level or a growth rate level? Now, all of these things are very powerful numbers that we need to be managing as part of your business. And even, sometimes that means hiring a marketing manager to do that, then let's get that done. so that we can actually build a business to a point where it's a really strong growth rate with tested and measured marketing strategies. Where we're buying customers at a really good price that allows us to make a profit up front. You have to think that there are some businesses out there that will never make a profit up front from a new sale. For example, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, those kind of companies. What do I mean by that? Well, you look at these companies, they buy customers by buying, say, for example, a hotel or a theme park, and then they become the only supplier. So if it's Coca-Cola, you can only buy Coke or that brand in that theme park, for example. So they buy the rights to buy the customer in that way. But they don't just think about the customer at that point and at that moment when they're at that theme park. They look at the lifetime value of that customer. So again, let's look at a Pepsi or Cola, a Coca-Cola. Maybe I'm showing my age out there, but there was they ran the ad of the new generation adverts that Pepsi ran. The whole aim or goal of these ads was to get new customers and customers to try Pepsi. And why? Well, it's because everybody knows out there you're either a Pepsi drinker or you're a Coke drinker. So the money spent running those ads will be paid back to them over a period of time. Because once you've decided that you're a Pepsi drinker, for example, you'll be a Pepsi drinker for life. And how much Pepsi do you buy during your lifetime? So if we look at the majority of companies out there even, they're using the investment approach without knowing they're using the investment approach. They don't realize how many times they have to get a customer back to make a profit on that customer. So now we're going to start to work out those numbers in our business and actually really understand them. And it's very simply put. Let's say, I ran this ad, and these are actual numbers. This advertisement, we ran it for £1,000 in a particular magazine. It actually brought us 10 new customers. So each one of those customers cost us 100. What it actually doesn't tell you is that it also brought in another 90 inquiries. So 100 inquiries. Each one of them had to be dealt with. And then each customer we finally converted, 1 in 10 to go into, and you sit down and you look at that, each one cost us £100 to buy. On average, our lifetime value out of these customers, out of these people, was £24,000 a piece. So it's not rocket science to work out that it's a very good advertisement for us. Because if you look at the acquisition cost, it's fine. But if you look at it in a relative to the lifetime value, it's brilliant. And that's what we need to do to know both numbers. Okay, it's not just the upfront, but it's the lifetime value. We can value our acquisition cost in regard to it. So so when you're looking at your customers that you've got in your database at the moment, what is their lifetime value? So, I have a little drink there. So let's go through this in a little bit more detail and see how it actually works. So if you look at it, you have an advertisement cost per contact, and so that's called cost per lead or cost per prospect. That cost per lead is an important number to know because you'll start measuring your conversion. Okay, and you need to know what it would be, especially if you've got a long sales process. Now, you might have several handling costs via lead. You might have a 2 or 3 step sales process where one sending a kit of information is X amount of pounds, and sending a second bit of information is Y pounds, sending the third kit, and so on. I'm not sure exactly your exact numbers or how they work in your business. What I do know is that on average, we've got to look at the cost to handle each lead from a call perspective, if it's telemarketing or an internet perspective, if it's someone to sit there and hit reply to leads and that sort of stuff, the cost to, the info kit or whatever information you're sending out needs to be calculated through the conversion rate. So actually think about your entire sales process and what is that cost per lead per step. Some of you are probably thinking, what on earth is she going about? And I want you to think about this. Action Coach, we have a 14-step process. We know the cost for each step, and that's what you need to know in your business. You know, we sit down and look at, if someone's at stage 1 of the sales process, it costs us X amount. But if someone's at stage 7 of the sales process, it's cost us a lot more. Okay. And because of the conversion rates along the way, or, you know, the dropouts along the way as well. So if we sit down and look at the lead of a person that's at stage, who's at this stage in our process, we can say it costs us X to get that person to that stage. So let's treat them like that. You know, and I suppose a lot of time salespeople don't respect the leads because they don't know the cost of that lead. You know, so if you work out as a business owner the cost per step and the cost per stage, then you suddenly become aware of how much value that customer is actually worth and how much you've spent on them so far. And it's only then when you finally start to understand the acquisition cost of your customer. You know, what it's actually costing you to buy that customer in each and every situation. You know, also I want you to start thinking about the leads sitting in your database as your stock. You know, how much money do you actually have tied up in the leads that you haven't yet made a sale to? You know, how much money have you from a marketing perspective, you know, sitting there in your database ready to be converted? You know, so think about how fast can we turn those leads into sales? Because one of the interesting parts of that is when you start to measure your conversion rates and you start to measure your cost per lead, you can also start to measure the time for each sale. You know, like we know, you know, for us selling a franchise with Action Coach, once it gets past 120 days, our conversion rate starts to drop. You know, once if it's inside 60 days, our conversion rate starts to drop. You know, so you've got an ideal, you know, time frame of between 60 and 120 days to get that ideal conversion rate. So, you know, think about it in your customers. You know, if you're having a customer inquiry, how long does it take to normally convert them into a customer? You know, if it's before 3 days, do they not buy? If it's after 10 days, do they not buy? So therefore, between 3 and 10 is where you really need to be concentrating. You know, you'll start to work that out. Why is it important? Well, it's important because you'll start to, you know, sit down and say, okay, the faster we can make a sale at a good conversion rate, the more money we're actually going to make, because it allows us to turn our stock or our leads on our database much faster. Let's get these all up on the screen here. There we go. So how do we go about buying customers? You know, first of all, you've got to set your budget. And what I mean by that is, you know, it's not based on 5,000 a month or 100,000 a month in advertising. Your budget should be set around your actual acquisition costs. So if you work out your allowable acquisition, okay, so remember that was the bit where you spend £100, you have £20 profit, and you actually only spend, you know, that £20 on your on purchasing that customer, then that's your allowable acquisition cost. Okay, but you know, also if you're going down that investment path, because you know that's what your industry dictates, then that's what your business needs to be doing right now. Work out how you're going to do it. What is your budget going to be for buying customers? You know, then you have to work out the number that you're actually wanting to buy. And this is a really interesting one because a lot of companies don't sit down and plan this. Now, Action Coach, we talk about our 5 ways figures. I gave you them a little bit earlier on. These are numbers that exist, and working backwards from what you want your profit to be, then say that means we need more leads and more conversion. You know, so we actually now know how many new customers we need to buy. Okay. Then we sit down and say, okay, how can we handle this? So if we want to buy an extra 500 customers this year, how many can we handle per month? Well, this month we can only handle an extra 30. So great, we've got to deal with it that way. And then gradually build us up to where we know we can, how many we want to buy over a period of time. And this is where your marketing plan starts to come together, and we can pick strategies and offers. Now, I want you to think about this for a second, marketing campaigns. You know, there are 3 stages in buying and building, not buying, building any marketing campaign, and they go in this order: target, offer, and copy. You know, and I've put them on the screen just so you can remember them out there. You know, the target is literally the most important aspect of the whole marketing campaign. If you have the best advertisement, the best copy with an amazing offer, you know, you're selling motorbike, you know, and you're selling motorbike, you know, spare parts, and you run the advertisement in a Cosmopolitan magazine, it doesn't matter how good your offer is or how good your writing your advertisement is. If it's in the wrong target, it will never work. Okay, and this is where targeting is most important. The offer is even more important than what's written in the advertisement, because the offer will compel people to act or not act. You know, these are the things that we need to look at. And then finally, the copy is the last thing. Problem for most people is when they start in marketing, they go, you know, reverse. They start with writing the advertisement, then they start with doing it that way, and then, you know, then they go to the target. That's the wrong strategy. We need to start target. So let's look at this in more detail. So the first thing we want to do is define what is your ideal customer. You know, an A customer or a B grade customer really are the two that we want to deal with. Okay, an A grade customer means I made all your criteria for a great customer. You know, what does your great customer look like? You know, they pay their bills on time, they give you great referrals, they're happy with the current pricing, they keep buying. They are the attributes of an A grade customer, and we want them. So sit down and work out to you, what does an A grade customer look like to you? How do they work? Because you see, you don't design your business to just deal with any customer. You design your business to deal with A grade customers, or at least the top two, A's and B's. These are the sort of customers that we want to have in our businesses. You know, too many businesses are designed to take on any type of customer. You know, they're not targeting the right customer for themselves. They may be looking at the C grade or even the D grade customer. You know, and you have to think about that. You have to think about it because you want those A's and those B's. You know, so base your business around how you can acquire them. You know, Brad also talks about a lesson that he learned from his dentist many years ago, Dr. Patty Lund. Dr. Lund would say that he was building his business. You know, he learned early on that some customers really made him excited and he loved to see them, but some customers he dreaded them coming in every day and working on their teeth. So basically he sat down and graded his customers and worked out who were the best ones and who are the ones that he really would be better off not having as customers. You know, what he realized was 80% of his business was coming from 20% of his customers, and also 80% of his headaches were coming from 20% of his customers, which are the ones that really he needed to move on. You know, and I suppose if you sit down, you know, and look at your customer, where is your revenue coming from? You know, where are your issues coming from? Brad has done this numerous times, and one example he uses at this point when you talk to him is that he used to work with an insurance broker who sat down and examined his customers and his clients and realized that of his revenue came from 13% of his customers. So in the end, he decided that 80% of his customer base he didn't use. So he sold that to another insurance company. It allowed him to reduce 80% of his overheads of his business. You know, and you have to think he's still bringing in more than 80% of his previous revenue with less than 20% of the cost. So understanding what customers we have in our business is key. Okay. Targets. Step one in building a campaign, once we've defined our ideal target audience or our ideal customer, you know, is basically to define the 20 most profitable or sizable targets for you that, you know, so what does that mean? So first of all, let's look at it, this perspective from what is your target audience, you know? So every time I speak to people about target audience, they get way too broad. They will define a demographic for me more than a target. So what do I mean by this? Well, you know, if I was to say to somebody, you know, working, say, for example, with a clothes shop, you know, what's your target audience? They might say something to me, oh, it's women aged between 30 and 50. Well, that's not a target, it's a demographic. we've been that demographic. There are a lot of targets and very small groups that can go after that. We can win their business a lot better because we targeted them very well and we're suited to them and they're suited to us, the other way around. So, how do we get to that target market? First and foremost, we examine our existing database in the marketplace. You could do a simple survey and ask questions like, what magazines do you read? What newspaper do you read? What clubs do you belong to? Where do you buy your glasses? What beautician do you use? The list goes on and on. And this really allows us to understand our existing customers, and it allows us to examine not only our existing customers, but also our marketplace. So I'll give you an example of us at Action Coach. We talk to our coaches when they first come on board. And we look at different areas for opening up new territories. And let's say we look at the business makeup in that area. So, for example, let's imagine that we found that there are 200 automobile dealerships, car dealerships in their area. Of course, we're going to target those 200 dealerships because that's a great target audience for our coaches. We may also find that there's a whole bunch of photographers, then we'll target that as well. If we find that there's a lot of insurance companies, then we'll do marketing just to those insurance companies. It's not about just doing marketing to business owners. It's about marketing to a specific type of business owner. It's about marketing to a specific strategy or a specific way of being in business. It's a very powerful way of actually building your business to do that strategy. Two things I look at, as we've said here, you've got to define the 20 most profitable or sizable target audiences. Profitable target audiences are going to be, more niche markets. These are the ones that are going to be, fairly niche. You're going to go after them really well. You've got to get in there, and there might be 100, 200 or 1,000 people in that market. And you go after them with telemarketing, direct mail, attending events that they're at, or something that is a more direct form of marketing than those in sizable markets. And what do I mean by a sizable market? Now, the example of that, I worked with an accountant and said, what's the most profitable for you? He sat down and worked out that the most profitable for him would be franchise companies, a sizable market. Another one was at an insurance company whose sizable market for them were farmers and the farming industry. He found that they were, highly profitable in. So there are different markets for different companies. So now we need to define your target. So there are two questions we usually ask, and we've also already dealt with the first one. The second one is that we have to ask is, where will I find the highest concentration? And this is where we're going to start our marketing. Now, let's imagine you're the insurance guy with farmers. Where would you find them in the highest concentration? Which magazines would they read? What clubs would they belong to? Which other businesses are they doing business with that he can go in and piggyback with them or do that host beneficiary strategy with them? So you're now looking to find them in high concentration because that's how we're going to get our targeted marketing working. Okay. What we have to do is obviously develop acquisition strategies to test for each and every one of those target audiences. So again, if you will, that insurance company going off to find farmers, you've got to sit down and work it out. I can test a direct mail piece to members of this club. I can test an advertisement in this particular magazine. I can test an email out or send a mail to the customers of that particular business, making them an offer in that particular business, that customer. These are things that we can do once we know where the high concentration areas are of these customers. So that's what we're going to work out. Who are the most sizable and profitable targets? And then second of all, we're working out where we're going to find a deep concentration of these customers. Who has a client base with your ideal target? The most profitable type of customers sat right there on their database. These questions, when you find the answers to them, allows you to create a much better marketing plan. So step 2, offers. There we go. So once we have our targets, what we then have to do is to create multiple offers to test each target market, target audience even. Now, what happens here in a lot of cases is people just make one single offer. We often hear from business owners, I just only used one offer and I never test more than one offer. My question is, if you never test more than one offer, then how do you know which offers are going to be the strongest for that particular marketplace? So you've got to sit down and look at it. Which offer is best? Sometimes it's a buy one, get one free. Sometimes it's a free giveaway. And how do we define that? So let's look at the two different types of target audiences. There's profitable and sizable. So profitable is normally, as I've explained, probably more niche, therefore might be 50 or 100 people in that target. And again, Brad always talks about his dog food business as an example here. They would go after the members of the dog clubs, and with these, they would make a free offer, an introductory offer to all of these people because they had a lot of people trying to advertise with them. So they wanted to appeal. Okay. We also knew that they wanted to give their dogs the best stuff. So we knew that it would be a high spender, a really good customer. We knew from looking at that conversion that offering a free product, we would convert them into a buyer. Now, if you're going to a sizable offer, like when you're running a TV advertisement, for example, for the dog food business, we're not going to give a free giveaway from a TV ad. But what we'll do is a purchase offer of some sort to get people started with us. So it's a good offer to get them started, but it's never going to be a free one because you're going to get the wrong type of people taking advantage of your offer. Does that make sense? Okay. So if you're looking at the niche, and as Brad says, with the dog food business, niche small, then a free giveaway because it's so concentrated and it's your ideal market, then a free giveaway is perfect. But if you're going for a large or sizable offer, then maybe the free giveaway is not going to, it will obviously work in the fact that it will bring in potentially the wrong type of people taking advantage of your offer. So you've got to sit down and work out, what does this target need as an offer? So creating your offers. Okay. Now the two questions that I generally ask in order to help us create the offer. Question 3 of building a marketing campaign. What is the end result? What do they really want to buy? But here too often when I sit down and look at this with people, what happens is that they go and make the offer about what it is they're selling. So just remember, it's not about what you're selling, it's what the customer is buying. For example, I've always told the story of no one ever bought a drill. I bought a hole in the wall. What ultimately people want is a hole in the wall. They don't necessarily want the drill, but they have to buy the drill in order to get the hole in the wall. So it's not about selling the drill, it's about letting the people buy the hole in the wall. And like me with business coaching, people don't necessarily want to buy a business coach. What they really want to buy is more profitability, less work, more consistency in results, growth. All this stuff is really powerful part of what people actually want to buy. And when you understand what people actually want to buy, then you can create your offer around that. And that brings us to that fourth question in building a campaign, or the second question in building an offer. Why emotionally do they want to buy it? What is the emotion behind their purchase? And everyone has different emotions attached to why they want to purchase something, and we need to recognize it. If we look at Action Coaches, one of the target audiences, is family owned and family run businesses. They're a great target audience for us. So we would do marketing to them. Now their emotions are going to be entirely different to, say, another target audience of ours, which is brand new startup businesses. They're another great target audience for us. So let's think emotion. What emotions do the startup businesses have in comparison to the family business? They're entirely different. What they want to buy is entirely different. So the offer has to be structured differently to each and every one of them. How we put that offer together. So just because we're trying to understand their emotions and what they really want, and therefore our offer is driven towards that, because that's what's going to drive them to take action. The right amount of emotion will drive them to take action. The wrong amount of emotion will not. It will just lead them to say, oh, that seems interesting, but we don't need anything, because we're not getting that hit emotionally. They're not getting what they really want to buy. So that's where the marketing really starts to become powerful. Once you've got those offers to test, obviously we can do that. And these days it's really easy to, test and measure our offers. Google ads, jump on Facebook advertising. Once you've got your offers, you can test them on there really, really quickly, because you can run 10 at the same time. Which one gets more traction? You can run them all for 24 hours. Which is the one that works? Which is the one that resonates? Okay. Now, the fifth part, or the fifth question, comes under our third segment, because once we've got each target and each offer defined, we decide now, how we're going to write that copy, and we're going to write that letter, or we're going to write, the brochure, or we're going to write the sales script for the telemarketers. Are we going to write the advertisement or the website or the email or whatever the actual item is? Because until you actually know your target and their offer, it's impossible to work out how best to send it, that offer to the target market. A lot of the times when we sit there and we start working on this, people will really start to see how much easier it is, because they've developed their marketing based on the 4 steps of developing a campaign. It's when I sit down and take a look at this and you say, okay, here's the target. Now, most of you, you're very profitable or really high-end targeted audiences, will have a different strategy. They'll have something like a host beneficiary or a direct mail piece, or they'll have a telemarketer followed up with, something like a host beneficiary or a direct mail piece. They'll have a telemarketer followed up with direct mail piece, and this is where we start to get real results, because we're doing the right thing. We've tested the headlines, we've tested the offer, and we're starting. I'm a firm believer when it comes to copy one preferred method. When it comes to copy, one preferred method is that we use lumpy mail. Brad gives some amazing examples of some lumpy mail that he's done. One being that he sent out a right arm of a mannequin to 10 prospects with a letter saying that he would give his right arm to work with them. He sent love hearts out on Valentine's Day asking if people are still in love with their business. You have to think, who am I targeting? Are they really high-end quality businesses? If that's so, then is it worth investing that amount of money to go after that client, rather than sending, just a first-class stamped addressed envelope with a piece of paper? When you really want to go after them, then you can do really creative stuff, things that get you noticed. Another example is that Brad has sent letters that are on a silver platter. He went out, he bought actual metal silver platters, he put an envelope on it, packed it in an overnight package and sent it to people. It arrived on their desk with a letter that was stuck to a silver platter, and there is their invitation on a silver platter. And you can do this because you've really targeted offers, because you're no longer having to send it to 1 million people. You're only sending it to 50, 20 or 100. And you have to think, Brad's also sent his books out to people saying, here's a book. If you want to know how to do it, we get meetings with over 20% of those people that he actually sent that book to. Whereas if you just sent a letter, you might get a meeting with about 3% of them. So different ways of doing it, but it's because you've defined your market, your target, okay? And because you've defined your offer, you can really go about it. And that's where you have to start with the targets, the 20 most profitable target audiences or sizable target audiences that you want to go after. Look back at your existing customer base and then sit down and really go, where am I going to find them in highest concentration? Now you're starting to think like a marketing manager. Now bring this up on the slide as a marketing plan. Now, you're starting to put together a marketing plan that is going to be extremely powerful. I want you to talk about this, marketing plan. Now, I believe a marketing plan should actually look like, first and foremost, it should have an evaluation of the current market. What is the actual market that you're looking at? That, how many people are there? What's the current amount that they're buying? What's the current amount that they're spending? What is it? Also, what is all the analysis of who your potential customers are? Broken down and start to get real details on them. The second thing is who's going to be your target audiences. So your ideal customer and 20 customer target audiences are going to be the second part of your marketing plan. The third part of it is your marketing, is your 5 ways. It's your 5-way strategies that we talked about very briefly. It's that number of leads, it's that conversion rate, it's your average value sale, it's your number of transactions, it's your 5-way figures. Okay. So sit down and work out what are your 5 ways that you're going to do after people in lead generation. What's your conversion rate strategies? What are your number of transactions or repeat business strategies? What are your strategies putting together the average value sale, and what are your margin-based strategies? Happy to jump on a call with anybody to talk about 5 ways. It's one of my favorite things. And these will take a major chunk of it, because if you put down referrals as one of your lead generation strategy, you can't just write down referrals. You've actually got to sit down and work out, how am I going to get those referrals? So it'll take up a minimum of 1 page of your marketing plan. Okay. Point 4 is what should go in your marketing plan is that it should be types of offers that you're going to be able to make to people. How are your offers going to be structured? Point 5 is a calendar. What does that mean? Is it just a calendar of dates? It's going to be a calendar of what you're going to build, so that you can actually run the campaigns based on different times of the year. So for example, calendar Valentine's, calendar springtime, summertime, all of that. You might have certain repeat business strategies that next month you will have a different repeat business strategy. You might have a certain customer acquisition strategy in 1 month and a different one the next month, depending upon time frame and the time of year it is. Building these into your marketing plan is a really important aspect. Point 6 is obviously the budget and the numbers. So you're going to run the numbers. What is your budget? What are your key performance indicators? What are all these things that are going to need to run to make sure that you have a really good marketing plan? So let's just recap, okay, before I finish today. Let's look at target audiences second. Then we go third and we start to develop our strategies. Fourth, we put together types of offers that we're going to use for the different parts of the strategies. We then lay it out in a calendar. When are these strategies going to be rolled out? When is the testing stuff? So, making sure that it's part of it. And then finally, 6, looking at the budget that's going to actually, what's it going to take to do all of this? And then only then can you give this to a marketing manager to actually put it together and actually make it work. So takeaways today, I want you to work out a system in your business to measure your current acquisition cost and lifetime value of your customers. Sit down and work out that lifetime value. Go back and pick the first 100 customers on your database and actually work that out. Define your ideal customer. Sit down and work it out. What are your traits of your ideal customer? What should you be looking for? What type of customer do you really want in your business? What do I want to be targeting? So if you define your ideal customer, then you need to become that ideal business that would attract them. And finally, I want you to define your 20 target audiences. So sit down and take a look at who are the 20 targets that you want to go after. Who are the 20 different target customers or the 20 target audiences that you want to go after? Sit down and examine your past customer base. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed the insight I've given you in how to become a marketing machine. If you have any further questions, then please do reach out to me. I'm Julie Cameron, a business growth specialist with Action Coach Solly Hull. Thank you.